Even before it came out, people have been saying that Darksiders is just like Legend of Zelda, and to those people I say, "Is you be trippin'." Okay, yeah, so maybe you do take the place of a singular chosen one, and you unlock new items and abilities as you go along. You even get a hookshot, abyssal chain. And yes, you do get your own cute horsey too, and by cute I mean undead, and by horsey I mean fire-breathing Hellraiser. But you can also temporarily slow time with your chronosphere, and use your faithful portal gun, Voidwalker, to get around complicated puzzles, and you maybe, somewhat, a tiny bit resemble a World of Warcraft night elf on steroids, but Darksiders is like totally an original game. But I exaggerate. While Darksiders is likely to remind you of one or all the games you've played before, it shouldn't feel too much like a ripoff. Instead, try to look at it as a beautiful synergism with all your beloved gaming past. The best of the best, thrown together in a delightful amalgamation of chaos and death. Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, Darksiders is probably not a game that's gonna go down in history as having the greatest script ever written. In fact, some might even say the story sucks, or at least leaves much unexplained, and not in a JRPG-like Room to Wonder sort of way. Basically, you play as War, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, who lands, for some reason, smack dab in the middle of a war between heaven and hell, and who, for some reason, takes to killing angels and demons alike. Turns out, you and your fellow equestrians aren't supposed to arrive until all 7 of some ambiguous seals are broken, and since you arrived early, you are now in some deep shit. So, a la Metroid Prime, you are stripped of your super cool powers as punishment, for something you couldn't really control, mind you, and sent back to Earth. However, eons have passed and now the world's a wasteland. The angels and demons have been busy this whole time, but don't seem to have made much headway or technological advances, as you'll be fighting the same enemies you were at the start. From there on, it becomes a lengthy process of slashing bad guys into bits, devising methods for disposing of bosses untouchable by normal means, and some more disconnected CGI cutscenes that more or less attempt to explain what's going on. Characterizations aren't much deeper. War is the typical badass hero. Female characters are hard to notice over the jiggling of their ample cleavage. Good guys turn out to be bad guys turn out to be useful, and in the end, anyone who's still surviving turns out happy. But hey, if we want a deep story, we'd go read a book, right? Darksiders graphics do well enough, I suppose. You aren't likely to go dropping your jaw at any panoramic views, and the enemy variation lacks, well, variation. But at least we're firmly out of the era of badly drawn sprites, nigh indistinguishable from their backgrounds. The art style seems to vary from area to area. You have your cartoony, wowish main character, the sort of gritty evil creatures from the Devil May Cry series, while the world itself is sort of generic dark fantasy. So, yeah, not much to write home about, but it gets the job done. I'm not going to knock too hard against Darksiders' sound. The music is even pretty sometimes, although it gets a little wearying hearing the same loop over and over. The sound effects befit the mood, lots of sword shings and grunting and shrieks of pain as you dismember your opponents. The voice acting is, well, about what you'd expect from games these days. Nothing too horrible, but nothing Emmy-worthy either. But, you know, if we want a nice sound, we listen to a CD, right? Before going into gameplay, let me give you this caveat. My name is Cleo, and I am not a God of War fan. Oh, I have no problem with the bloodshed or the objectification of women or anything like that. It's simply that my hands get tired of having to mash the same button so quickly and so repetitively. So though I wasn't entirely pleased with all the button mashing in Darksiders, those who are fans of Gods of War-like games probably will be. I do like that you, as I said before, unlock different items and abilities as you play, from different and more powerful ways of slashing your sword to entirely different weapons, namely a scythe and some kick-ass boxing gloves. There are also secondary items you can use, if you want to call them that, like the hookshot, aka abyssal chain, and this giant Naruto-esque shuriken that I actually grew kind of fond of. Like the sword, you can unlock new ways of using these other items, my favorite of which is probably the ability to charge up the shuriken, then stick it into an enemy to continually hurt them while keeping them in place for some hurting of your own. Yes, my thumb did start hurting after the first few hours or so, but it was worth it. There's something sinfully satisfying about slicing and dicing enemies after a long day of dealing with a-holes in real life. If you had asked me months ago what the replay value was for Darksiders, I probably would have told you there isn't much. However, as I finally got around to making this review, I loaded up the game to get some footage and the funniest thing happened. I found I didn't want to stop playing long enough to make the review. So while it's a pretty shallow game as far as story goes, the gameplay itself makes it worth keeping around. It's nice now and then to play a no-brainer of a game, with just enough storyline to give at least some reasoning behind all the mayhem, and with fluid, upgradable gameplay to reward you for hours spent playing it. It's funny because if you try to split it into parts, no single aspect of Darksiders is all that great, not even gameplay. Yet despite this, it manages to be a fun game, rewarding in its own right and entertaining as video games are meant to be. It won't tickle your drama bone like Heavy Rain or make you think unless it's to work at piecing together all the disconnected storylines. But Darksiders is certainly worth trying, maybe keeping if you find the gameplay satisfying enough. It's been long enough that you can pick it up from the store for relatively cheap. So I suggest doing that. If nothing else, it makes a good game to give to a 5-year-old. Just kidding. It is rated M after all. Seriously guys, I was kidding. Please don't give it to your 5-year-old. Maybe 7, but... you didn't hear that. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye! Oh, and if you're ever so sweet, you could subscribe, comment, maybe even like. So yeah, happy gaming!